Hi, I'm Micah Clark, the Director of the American Family Association of Indiana. Appreciate you joining us today. If you've listened to our videos before, in the spring we did a Friday video recapping what was going on in your Indiana State Legislature. On this December 30th, we are 1 week out from the legislature. It starts on January 9th. So I appreciate you joining us. We were a little surprised at how many people were viewing these videos. I feel a little awkward doing them, I have to tell you. But I hope the content is good. I hope it's useful. We will try to keep these short and helpful and do a recap every Friday of what's happened in your Indiana General Assembly. Now, as I mentioned, the legislature this year starts January 9th, which is a little bit later than the last couple years. Usually it's the first week. And because of that, I think the State House website has been kind of slow. We have not seen any publicly posted bills yet for the legislature. I've talked to a lot of legislators. I kind of know a few things that are coming out, but I do not have any bill numbers for you today. So today, on December 30th, I just thought we'd talk about how to contact your state legislator, why that's important. I've seen so many times over the years, in my 30 years as a lobbyist at the State House for family causes, how just a few phone calls can make a big difference. But of course, a lot of times it depends on what those phone calls are like. Now, I want to tell you, there is one thing a legislator can always use, can always say that leadership or opponents or the media who disagree with him or her cannot counter, and that is, this is where my district stands, this is what my constituents want. And that's where you play an important role. If legislators get a lot of phone calls or letters or emails on an issue, they can tell people, this is where my district stands, this is how I'm going to vote, and nobody can really argue with that as a representative of that district. So it is very important that we make our voices heard. Now, I want to mention a few things. When you call your legislator or email your legislator, calling especially, I know, can be a little intimidating. Don't worry about that. I'll tell you, about 50% of the time, you're probably going to be sent directly to their voicemail. Another 10 or 20% of the time, you may have a legislative assistant answer the phone. And of course, you may have the legislator also answer the phone, but it's not very common, but it does happen. And of course, when you talk to the legislative assistant, a staff member, or the legislator themselves, there's a few things to keep in mind. First of all, you want to limit your topic to 1 or 2 bill items. Don't give them a big laundry list of things. I want you to vote on this, this, and this. I want you to vote yes on this, no on this. Keep it concise. Keep it to 1 or 2 issues at a time. Because, first of all, you need to be respectful of their time. And second of all, they may not listen to your 3rd or 4th issue. The other thing is very important when you call your legislator, try to get your facts straight, get your facts verified. One thing that can hurt your cause is if you say something that the legislator knows is not true. Now, I'm not saying the legislator may or may not agree with you, but if you have a fact about a bill that has helpful information, make sure that's a good fact, and that can be very persuasive. 1 point is fine. You don't have to list 5 or 6. You don't have to be an expert. You can say, I want you to vote on House Bill 1024 because I think it's good for Indiana. I think it would affect my family in a positive way. That's fine. But when you do mention something, a percentage or a stat, make sure it's something you can verify. Now, they may not challenge you, but it's good to have your facts in order. Second of all, be brief. You're not their pen pal. You want to respect their time, and they will appreciate that. Another thing is, this is about persuasion. This is not about getting something off your chest, your one chance to tell your legislator what you really feel about something. This is about persuading them to vote the right way. So think about how you would be heard if you were the legislator. Put yourself in the legislator's position. So as a Christian and as a person of faith, I think we have to present ourselves in a positive way. We have to be respectful of those who are in authority over us. Even if they don't vote the way we want, we need to be respectful to them. They will appreciate that. You know, it's a difficult job down there. These people, a lot of them are away from their families, especially if they're from Auburn or Vincennes or South, and they have to stay at the State House Monday through Thursday nights in a hotel in the Circle. They're away from their family. There's a lot of stresses. It helps if you're polite to them, even if you know they may or not vote the way you want. The other thing is, and this does not happen very often, I think it needs to, you need to thank them. I always, when I write a letter to a legislator or I talk to them about an issue, I always try to thank them for their service because it is a sacrifice. They're not paid a lot of money. Now, a lot of them are there to be somebody. They think their position's something important, but most of the people there are just like you and I, and so we should treat them with respect and thank them for their service. The second thing is, if you're following your legislator, if you're watching what they're doing, and they vote on a bill that's important to you, send them a handwritten note or an email thanking them, because very few people ever do that. In fact, very few people actually even call their legislator. When I worked at the State House, it was not very common to get 10 or 12 or 15 calls on an issue that the media wasn't talking about. And as you know, the media is not with us. The media is going to focus this year mostly on budget issues, things they care about, and the issues that we do care about that may bubble to the top, they're not probably going to present them in the way you and I would see those issues, because most of the media, outside of maybe radio, most of the TV and print media has a left-wing slant to it in some form. But so it's important that we thank them for their service, that we talk to them about these issues, because so few people do. So 10, 15 calls, especially in one day, can have a huge impact. So don't think your call doesn't matter. It does. I know it's a little intimidating to call a legislator, but once you've done it a couple times, it's quite easy. Now, but in that regard, you're also not necessarily their friend. By that I mean, don't try and be their pen pal. Don't try to call them on every single issue. I don't give an alert on everything. There's over 1,200 bills filed. You don't need to call your legislator on 50 different issues. If you do, they may start to dismiss you. Oh, that's just Joe Schmo who calls me on everything. Call on what matters to you, and hopefully in our weekly emails we will give you bills that matter, that you can call about, that are of key importance. The other thing is, with 1,200 bills, over 1,200 bills in a long session, this is a long session because of a budget, but in any given session, short or long, only about 200 to 250 bills become law and make it to the governor's desk and get signed into law. That's the way our founders set up our system. It's much easier to derail a bill or stop a bill than it is to pass a bill. And legislators have limited calendar dates they have to meet. They have limited time. They can only hear so many bills. So of these 1,200 bills, you may find one by going to the Indiana Legislative General Assembly website and say, oh, I really care about that bill. And certainly if you do, it's good to call the legislator. But you need to know most of the bills you see are probably not going to move. We'll tell you which ones we think will move, which ones need support, and which ones we think have a chance, and also which ones need to be stopped if that's necessary. So one of the questions I also get to is, what is the most effective way to contact your legislator in this day of age of technology? Well, surprisingly, the most important, most effective way is a handwritten letter or a typed letter with your signature, because so few people do that anymore. It's also the most labor intensive, but because they get so few of those are very influential, and they do read those. They do have staff respond to those. And many legislators will respond themselves. They'll tell their staff, this is what I want to say. I did that when I was an intern. I would meet with legislators every week, and they would tell me what issues are coming in, who's saying what, who's calling. Here's how I'd like to respond on this issue. So they will read your letter, but I also know there's a lot of time. The legislature moves very quickly. Sometimes you don't hear about a bill until there's been a hearing on it, and there may only be a couple days before they vote on it again. So the most effective way, and most practical way, is a phone call. If you can't make a phone call, don't have time, an email is still somewhat effective, although they get a lot of those, but you can do both. You can call and email. I encourage people to do that. And then the last option are kind of down the scale of petitions. And petitions are important, but they are probably the least effective means of communicating. But there's no reason not to write a letter, call, email, and sign a petition on an issue that really matters to you. Now, a couple of issues we will see, and I'll close with this, that I'm expecting to see, but again, I don't have bill numbers. We're going to see issues this session on parental rights. We're going to see issues on education, giving parents rights in education. In parental rights, I'm referring to raising children, medical decisions for children, the transgender issue of drugs and surgeries and young children, You'll see a bill about that. We do not want children to make life-altering decisions, to have radical surgeries or take dangerous drugs because they have gender confusion, which most kids will grow out of during puberty. So there's much better ways, and I think parents have got to be involved in those decisions. But frankly, I don't think doctors should be doing experimental surgeries on kids. So you may see a bill like that. You'll also probably see a bill regarding sex education that limits the sexual radical stuff that we see, the LGBT indoctrination issues. There's a lot of people, and I am one of them, who think sex education should not even be begun until kids are of a certain age. We shouldn't be telling kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders about certain things that they're not capable of processing. So those are some issues. We may also have one of the big issues we had last year in the summer, as you know, was the abortion issue, Senate Bill 1. That bill has been challenged in multiple ways in multiple courts in Indiana. The Indiana State Supreme Court is going to decide that, settle that issue. They're having a hearing on the 14th or 15th of this month. So it's possible, even though it's after the bill filing date, depending on how they rule, you might see some legislative action to clean up the bill with an amendment or something like that. But pray for that, because the state Supreme Court is going to decide on the fate of abortion in Indiana, elective abortions in particular, those done for reasons other than rape, incest, or the life of the mother, is what that bill deals with. So pray about that. Pray that they will protect children in that ruling, and that they will defer to the legislature, let the legislature's decision stand on the passage of Senate Bill 1. So those are some issues we're looking at. There's all sorts of things that will pop up, things that even surprise us sometimes, that get movement, and we will keep you informed of that. Please sign up if you don't get our weekly email, or please read the weekly emails for those things. And also, let me give you this too, as I talk about contacting the legislature. Your state Senate can be contacted at 317-232-9400. The House can be contacted at 317-232-9600. And obviously you want to contact your senator about Senate bills, your House member about House bills. There's also a link that is very useful that we're promoting a lot. It will be on this video. The Find Your Legislator. We have a QR code in our January newsletter. I'll put in our email as well. But the Find Your Legislator link will take you directly to your legislator, where you can email them and call their desk. The numbers I gave you were switchboard numbers. The Find Your Legislator link will give you the contact information and the name of their legislative assistant. You can get right to your legislator by simply putting in your address, and that will tell you who your legislators are. So that is at the Indiana General Assembly website. Find Your Legislator link. Just Google Indiana General Assembly, and you'll see at the top, below the Capitol picture in the middle of the page, there's a Find Your Legislator tab. Simply click on that in your home address. That will tell you who your legislator is. So I want to thank you for joining us. If you'd like to support us, this is year end. It's a very important time for donations. We're run solely upon donations of individual donors like you. You can go to our website at afain.net, click on the donation link. You can also mail a donation to AFA of Indiana, P.O. Box 40307, Indianapolis, Indiana 46240. But I want to thank you for listening today. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to email. By the way, when you get our weekly email, and you want to respond to it, simply hit respond. It comes right to me. I read all those and be happy to respond with those things. So I hope you have a wonderful new year, and we'll talk to you next week.